Great. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you for joining this important webinar. My name is Serdar Yılmaz. I'm the manager for the Public Financial Management team at the World Bank, and I'm delighted to welcome all of you to this very first PIFA webinar in 2026. And please keep in mind this webinar is being recorded, I'm sorry. It's being recorded. Today's webinar is on From PEFA to PFM Reforms, a Success Pathway. And we have an excited lineup of speakers for the webinar. We are going to have our Global Director, Arturo Herrera Gutierrez, to provide us an opening remarks to set the tone. Then we will have a presentation from the PIFA Secretariat delivered by our Sirini Guruzada and Mona El-Chami. Then we will turn to our colleague Roy Ursal, who's from the Commission on Audit of the Government of Philippines, and the Philippines has recently concluded PIFA++ assessment. And Maria Kaiser, our colleague from Asian Development Bank, joined the presentation to tell us the experience in the Philippines. Afterwards, we are going to have Ruth Farhan, the director from Asian Development Bank, will present ADB's vision for PFM reforms in Asia Pacific. This will be followed by a brief questions and answers. And please post your questions using the chat box here. And finally, we will conclude with closing remarks by Aman Tarana, Director General from Asian Development Bank. I want to highlight that this year, 2026, is the 25th year of PIFA partnership. And PIFA reached another milestone with Asian Development Bank formally joining PIFA initiative. ADB and World Bank signed an agreement for ADB joining the PIFA, and on behalf of all the PIFA partners, let me take this opportunity to thank Aman Tarana, Srinivasan Janardhanan, Ruth Farhan, Giulietta Ponia, and all other colleagues at the IDB for this happening. But I want to particularly highlight and appreciate the extensive work of Srinivasan Janardhanan, your Sirini, who recently retired after an illustrious career as director. Before I request our global director, Arturo, to make an opening remarks, we have a short video to watch. Mark, please bring up the video.
ADB is now a partner of the Public Expenditure and Financial Accountability Program, or PEFA. PEFA is a globally recognized leader on diagnostic tools for public financial management. PEFA supports fiscal discipline, transparency, and accountability, essential elements for efficient management of public and donor resources, for building trust in public institutions, and for enabling economic growth.
Hi, we want to welcome the Asian Development Bank to PEFA. This is important for several reasons. This is actually the first time that a regional bank joined our effort. But probably more important than that is at a time in which the fiscal space has been tightening around the world. It's critical that all of us who care about building resilient public institutions work together. Very welcome.
PEFA provides governments with a common framework to assess their public financial management systems using evidence-based indicators that report on strengths and weaknesses of PFM and helps identify areas for improvement.
ADB will leverage its PEFA partnership to further increase efforts to help our clients prioritize public financial management reforms to achieve better development outcomes. In 2025, ADB led PEFA national assessments in the Philippines and Kazakhstan, and in subnational assessment in Nepal.
The 2025 Philippines PEFA, or Public Expenditure and Financial Accountability Assessment, identified key gaps that are now informing the update of our Public Financial Management Reform Action Plan for 2024 to 2028. With ADB support, we are building better systems for more efficient and transparent management of public funds, improved service delivery, and deepening trust among our citizens and development partners.
ADB has been using PEFA reports to inform the design of PFM projects in our developing member countries. Now, as PEFA partners, we look forward to contributing to global tools and knowledge on PFM.
We have reached 2 milestones. PEFA program turns 25 and Asian Development Bank joins the PEFA program. Welcome ADB. Together with the European Commission, IMF, World Bank, France, Norway, Switzerland, Slovak Republic, and Luxembourg, we are elevating PFM collaboration like never before.
By achieving this important milestone, ADB, as a member of the PEFA program, will play a leading role in strengthening public financial management systems across the Asia and Pacific region. Another important initiative by ADB for solving complex challenges together.
Great. Thank you. Arturo, over to you.
Thank you, Serdar. And some of the things that I was planning to say were actually capturing the video. In any case, really happy to be here for this, which will be our first webinar in 2026. Good morning in Manila. Good night here in a very cold Washington, D.C. As Serdar was mentioning, this is a very special year in many senses and very relevant for PEFA. This is a 25 year of PEFA, which means that this is a tool that over time has been able to consolidate it, and it becomes the standard when it comes to try to capture good practices across the world, but also to provide some sort of baseline so that countries and subnational governments could compare to each other and try to identify how are they doing. It's very important to recognize why PEFA was born, and some of the very important reasons is that PEFA was created in the aftermath of some of the very serious financial crises of the 90s, including the East Asian crisis, but also the killer crisis in '94, which started in my country, and the Russian crisis. And the idea was that PEFA will help countries to try to strengthen their financial management systems, but also to identify early on potential fiscal risk. Now, PEFA is not a static tool. It has been evolved over the years, and particularly over the last, I would say, 5 to 7 years, it has been adapted so that some of the more current concerns have been implemented. Which are those ones? Climate change issues and gender issues are some of the most relevant. Now, that doesn't mean that PEFA is taking distance from its original purpose, and particularly not in these times. After the COVID crisis, after the increase on the interest rates, after the increase on commodity prices, we have seen a lot of stress in the fiscal space across the world. According to our own numbers at the World Bank, a little bit more than 60 countries are already now in debt distress, or on high risk of debt distress, or a monetary risk of debt distress. That means that almost 1/3 of all countries around the world are actually going through a very difficult fiscal situation. In that sense, PEFA is not only a tool that helps countries to measure where they are, but it's a very helpful tool that allows countries to produce a roadmap of which reforms they need to deploy. We are really, really happy to be partnering now with the Asian Development Bank. This is, as Serdar mentioned it before, the very first regional bank which is joining PEFA, and it's joining at a very important moment. And we're really, really happy also to launch this partnership in practice with a presentation about Philippines. So welcome again, everybody. I'm really happy to be here with you. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Arturo. I'll turn to Srini and Mona for their presentation.
Mona, please go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. PEFA is now used in about 155 countries worldwide, and Asia represents a significant portion of this global engagement. When we look specifically at Asian countries, the performance of public financial management systems is quite mixed. We see a number of PFM dimensions where countries in the region perform strongly, but we also see several areas where substantial room for improvement remains. And of course, many countries fall somewhere in the middle, performing moderately. Before Srini outlines the approaches for strengthening the weaker areas, let me briefly highlight a few examples of PFM aspects that tend to perform well in Asia, and those where countries still face challenges. On the positive side, PEFA assessments show several dimensions where Asian countries tend to score relatively well. For example, debt management practices reflected in PI 13 are often strong. Internal controls on non-salary expenditure under PI 25 also tend to be well established. We also see good performance and predictability of in-year resource allocation, and likewise, some of the strongest dimensions relate to budget approval timing. The clear definition of rights and obligations for revenue measures and reliable information and transfer of revenue collections. So overall, these results show that there are solid foundations and good practices across many parts of the PFM system that countries can build on. Click, please. At the same time, the PEFA results highlight several areas where further strengthening is needed. Fiscal risk reporting, PI 10, remains one of the weakest indicators across the region, especially with respect to monitoring public corporations and subnational governments. Public investment management and investment project costing also continue to be major gaps. Another cluster of challenges relates to medium-term budgeting, including the consistency of forward estimates, and to oversight functions such as external audit and legislative scrutiny of audit reports. These results tell us that while many important elements of the PFM system are functioning well, there are equally important areas where countries have clear opportunities to scale up reforms and improve performance. And I leave the floor now to Srini to discuss with you how to do that. Thank you.
If these are the aspects of PFM which needs improvement, is it not simple, straight? If these are scoring C's and D's in a PEFA assessment report, they need to move to a score of B's and A's, and that's the PFM reform strategy? If that is the case, if things are so simple, then probably PFM reforms would have automatically worked world over. Now, let me actually, but unfortunately, still you hear criticism from various quarters. For example, something which Andrew and others some time back said, PFM reforms producing administrative systems in developing countries that look like those in modern states, but do not, indeed cannot perform like that. The distinction between what is in form and function. So PFM reforms is a science, but not it's such an exact science. It's also an art, the art of PFM to make it all work. Let me take you through few thoughts based on a product we have in the PEFA Secretariat. This is a product on from PEFA to PFM reforms. We call it a PEFA Handbook Volume 4. I'll talk through few thoughts from this and also share few reflections on what we see worldwide. Let me ask you two leading questions. First, is a PEFA assessment report always the starting point for PFM reform action plan? It's a leading question, which means you know the answer. Yes, it can be the starting point. PEFA assessment report can be the starting point if the government is trying to improve, but for example, a particular aspect of PFM. But perhaps no, if the intention of government is to improve the development outcome of something else, for example, health service delivery outcome, then a PEFA assessment report is not necessarily the starting point. You first start with what you target at the overall outcome level and see how PFM relates to that, and then come to the PEFA assessment report. That's number one. So the starting point. Second, does a PEFA assessment report always provides you full and enough information for a detailed action plan? PEFA reports are objective and evidence-based reports. They give you a lot of information, but they may not always give you all information. So I always say, PEFA measures the measurable. What does that mean? There could always be something which is not measured, and that doesn't get covered in the PEFA assessment report. For example, the political economy, the ability, the human resource capability, the coordination and interaction between departments and agencies. These aspects do not come out so clearly in PEFA assessment report. That's the reason why there is an exercise beyond a PEFA assessment to have a conscious choice of a reform plan. Within this product of PEFA to PFM reform, we have a kind of a structure of a 7-stage process that we recommend. So in the first stage is to identify the problem. What's the problem? What are the PFM strengths and weaknesses as that? Part of it comes from the PEFA report, and if the problem is outside the PFM as such, so then possibly that's an area that you would also look at it. Then what are the reasons for the strengths and weaknesses of PFM system? PEFA reports give a lot of information, but the reasons why some PFM aspects are not working, it's not mandatory for a PEFA report to cover. So understanding these reasons could be even outside, and that's the stage of PFM reforms action plan development. Identify what is the government's desired outcome and what initiatives can bring that outcome. Reform prioritization. Prioritization, when we say prioritization, it actually doesn't necessarily mean do we prioritize public procurement over internal audit, program budgeting over parliamentary scrutiny? No. Perhaps within the reforms itself, what are the foundational things? For example, in a program budgeting, do you have the cash rationing thing which is fixed in the beginning? Or for that matter, when you're trying to reform accounting, do you have the foundations in place as such? And what are the constraints? Is it political constraints? There may be technocrats who are excited with reforms, but there's no political buy-in. Things won't work. Perhaps there is no funding available. Things can't make progress. Interdepartmental coordination is an issue. What are the constraints and how you overcome that? And have a clear, actionable deliverables in the reform program. So that's the kind of an overall approach, and have a follow-up. The follow-up, how do you follow up or measure PFM progress? 2 levels. So one is like, there need to be an annual mechanism as per this guidance, that there should be at least annual follow-up of various PFM reforms based on some of the aspects that we measure in the PEFA report. And then beyond that, there should be every 3 to 5 years a PEFA assessment. So stale PEFA assessment reports of 5 years, more than 5 to 6 years, are perhaps not useful as such. So that's another aspect to cover. Now, let me come to some success mantras from what we see as things working. what do you use for monitoring PFM progress in a PFA PFM action plan? Do you use the PFA dimensions? Do you use the indicators? Normally, the indicator is a kind of a PFM aspect and a dimension is a sub aspect. Real action takes place at dimension level. Improvements happen at dimension level. It's like small building blocks building the overall process, and measurement and monitoring ideally is done at dimension level or even a sub-dimension level. For example, if a country is working on medium-term expenditure ceilings, that is indicator 16.2, it is better to take 16.2 dimension rather than indicator number 16, which is about medium-term budget perspective in expenditure budgeting. Then we always say build on signals of success. For example, I experienced in one country where years IFMIS systems were not progressing, and when the finance minister saw the value of treasury single account in saving a lot of interest costs, that success signal led eventually the IFMIS also to be immensely successful. Build on success signals. Demystify reforms through change management. Does line ministry lose control over cash if TSA, treasury single account, is implemented? Or if internal audit stops doing pre-audit function, sensitize that how they'll be re-engaged and redeployed into post-audits. So a change management strategy in place. And the technology. A lot of PFM reforms, digital PFM or technology. So use technology not for the sake of technology, but for actual PFM reforms. There could be cases where a small PFM problem could be used for large-scale IT change as such. If that's strategically done, that's fine. But then normally, it is not the technology which drives. These days with blockchain, AI, there's a lot of PFM innovations possible, but the focus we see is like PFM driving the business, driving the technology, and not necessarily the technology driving the business as such. And finally, we in the PFA Secretariat, we are always glad to work while we do not do the PFM reform strategy preparation. Post PFA exercise, we do engage when governments or development partners would want any advice in bringing this knowledge around. We'll be glad to collaborate with you. For all PFA information, to visit the PFA website. We now also have a PFA AI bot, Ask PFA AI. Thank you very much, and back to Sardar.
Thank you, Mono. Thank you, Sireni. Before moving to Philippines presentation, I believe we have a short video about the PFA assessment in the Philippines. I'm going to ask Mark to play the video and then Roy and Maria to come in for presentation. Mark, please.
The Philippines is one of the fastest growing economies in Southeast Asia, but with growth comes responsibility to manage public funds wisely, to deliver better services, and to build resilience for the future.
I issued Executive Order number 29 last June of 2023 in order to strengthen the public financial management information systems and to streamline its processes.
The Philippine government embarks on a three-phased approach to the Philippine reform agenda.
The centerpiece of this trilogy is Phase 2, the 2025 Public Expenditure and Financial Accountability, or PEFA assessment. 21 agencies and over 80 government experts and development partners worked side by side to deliver the most comprehensive PFM diagnostic in the country's history, marking firsts for the country, Southeast Asia, and the world.
We are the first in ASEAN to conduct a full-scale public financial management disaster response and recovery assessment. We are also ahead of our neighbors in transparency, asset management, and strategic budgeting.
From October 2024 to April 2025, fieldwork, technical, and high-level discussions were held, utilizing a digital platform for evidence gathering and validation. The PEFA check was obtained on April 22, 2025, affirming the quality and reliability of the assessments. In addition to the primary PEFA assessment, which measures progress made since the last assessment conducted in 2016, There are also gender-responsive PFM, measuring how budgets respond to the unique needs of men, women, and subgroups across 9 indicators. Climate-responsive PFM and disaster-resilient PFM, critical for a nation where 70% of the population is exposed to natural hazards. Child-responsive PFM, a pioneering tool that asks whether investments truly meet the needs of children in health, education, and protection.
This approach demonstrates the government's commitment to inclusivity, listening to key stakeholders and development partners, and addressing critical issues related to climate, gender, and disaster resilience.
The greatest achievement was how the process was carried out. Inclusive and participatory, collaborative, with strong partnerships between government and development partners like the UN, Global Fund, and AFD. And above all, transparent, with the government making a full public disclosure of the findings.
Now comes Phase 3, turning insights into action through a detailed action plan for reform.
The work ahead demands that we do more, so let us all act with urgency. Let us get it done, and let us do it right.
With the strong support of our partners, especially with ADB, I am confident that the PFM reforms roadmap will lead the nation to a higher growth trajectory and ultimately to reducing poverty and achieving genuine prosperity.
But this is not the end of it. I think this will be a springboard for more reform initiatives here in the Philippines, but hopefully across ASEAN.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Roy, over to you, please.
Good morning, everyone, especially those attending in this PEFA Asia Pacific webinar. On behalf of the PFM Committee and the Commission on Audit, thank you for inviting the Philippines to share how the recent PEFA assessment results are being used to help shape the country's public financial management reform agenda. On June 2025, the PEFA++ Disaster Resilient and Responsive PFM and Child Responsive PFM assessments for the Philippines were officially released, offering a somewhat 360-degree view of the country's PFM landscape. These assessment reports help the Philippine government to reflect on its financial management reform direction, ensuring that reform measures remain robust, responsive, and aligned with international standards. The release of 5 PEFA reports signaled the strategic review and recalibration of the PFM reforms roadmap 2024-2028, where every intervention underwent scrutiny to ensure it is backed by execution-ready action plans. This review and recalibration form part of the PFM reform agenda, which consists of a 3-phased approach aimed at improving the integrity and effectiveness of the PFM system. This initiative is being spearheaded by the PFM Committee, chaired by the Philippines Department of Budget and Management, with Commission on Audit and Department of Finance as members, and the Department of Economy, Planning and Development, or the DepDev, and the Department of Information and Communications Technology, or DICT, as resource institutions. Phase 1, conducted in early 2024, primarily focused on the development of the Philippine PFM reforms roadmap, which captured insights and aspirations of over 1,100 PFM practitioners and senior officials from national government agencies and the regional offices, local government units, and civil society organizations. This PFM reforms roadmap was submitted to the Office of the President in September of 2024. Phase 2 which is the assessment of PFM performance, is a deep dive to the PFM health through the conduct of the PEFA++, Disaster Resilient and Responsive PFM, and Child Responsive PFM assessments. This was conducted in the second semester of 2024 through the able support of multiple development partners led by the Asian Development Bank, Global Fund, AFD, IFAD, UNICEF, UNDP, UNRCO, and the World Bank. Lastly, Phase 3 or the medium-term review and updating of the PFM reforms roadmap 2024 to 2028 focuses on recalibration of interventions informed by these assessment results. In this phase, we want our reforms to take flight, so to speak, but they must be built for the terrain. While we pursue ambitious reform trajectory, we are grounded on operational realities down in the field. This slide shows the highlight on the results of the assessment or an offshoot of the second phase of the PFM reform agenda. What were the key messages or findings of the assessment? Number one, the country made progress in its PFM system, evidenced by numerical average improvement from 2.19 in 2016 to 2.72 in 2025. While there is overall improvement, actions are called for in predictability and control in budget execution, policy-based fiscal strategy and budgeting, legislative scrutiny of audit reports, financial data integrity, and budget reliability. Number two, supplementary assessments were likewise undertaken, which provide the Philippine baseline data that show that much can still be done to improve gender, climate, and DRR PFM. Gender PFM in particular demands a strategic pivot from compliance to outcome-focused results, highlighting long-term societal impact. Climate and DRR PFM to prove to have strong legal and institutional framework. However, its expenditure tracking and legislative scrutiny can still be improved. The exercise also allowed us to apply a child-centered lens to our PFM processes, ensuring the system is responsive to the unique needs of the children. While there is no standard metrics yet, the gender PEFA framework serve as launchpad for a qualitative child PFM assessment. Results showed that child PFM effort is fragmented and can benefit from the establishment of a foundational structure to effectively harmonize a child responsive PFM efforts of the country. These assessment results, as is shown in the slide, have undergone a series of comprehensive review to aid in the development of Reform Action Plan, an important document that details the reform priorities, timelines of implementation, key performance indicators, dependencies, financial strategy, and the identification of accountable office, ensuring that diagnosis goes beyond paperwork. To produce this document, we conducted a series of technical sessions, focused group discussions, and regional and high-level consultations from August to December of 2025. This process was tedious, but it ensured that reforms are reflected in the nation's needs, capacity, and priorities. Imagine having to go through 150 plus PEFA recommendations and narrowing them down to pinpoint only those which are doable, urgent, and impactful. Building on stock taking in phase 1 and evidence-based assessment in phase 2 and the comprehensive review resulted to integration of activities aimed at addressing gaps on the following. Number 1, operational integration. Number 2, expenditure control. Number 3, operational monitoring. 4th, medium-term fiscal strategy and budgeting. And 5th, accountability. The specific reform activities were mapped out across the existing 11 strategic focus areas of the PFM reforms roadmap 2024 to 2028, namely, number 1, planning and budgeting linkage. Number 2, cash management. Number 3, public asset management. 4th, accounting and auditing. 5th, capacity development. 6th, digital PFM. 7, PFM policy and legal framework. 8, public procurement. 9, DRRM. And 10, PFM for local government units and monitoring evaluation. The updated reforms roadmap, together with its reform action plan, is slated or scheduled for approval and release by the PFM committee within the first quarter of this year, 2026. In summary of the Philippine experience on PEFA assessment vis-a-vis the country's public financial management reform agenda, I would like to share with you the results of the key takeaways of PFM stakeholders who participated in the regional consultation workshops when asked how to make reforms effective and enduring. These are the feedbacks from almost 400 respondents that highlighted the need for, number 1, strengthened monitoring and evaluation of PFM reform initiatives. Number 2, stakeholder engagement. Number 3, capacity building for PFM practitioners. Number 4, consistency in implementation of PFM reforms. Number 5, institutionalization. Number 6, leadership and commitment. And most importantly, collaboration among all PFM stakeholders and development partners. To conclude, the Philippine journey to translating PEFA results to action can be summarized into 3 core lessons. First, take ground to sustain. Sustainability of actions to tackle the gaps entail in-depth consultation and dialogue with PFM actors on the ground who does the day-to-day PFM work. Second, innovate to transform. The courage to accept deficiencies of the system to embrace, innovation is necessary for reforms to take shape. For this, we thank the continued support of development partners such as the Asian Development Bank, who has been very helpful in providing new perspective. And lastly, own to endure. Sustaining PFM reforms entail accountability. This sense of accountability is what fuels reform momentum. Thank you for your time, and I wish everyone a great day.
Thank you, Roy. Maria.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I don't have much to add, just really to indicate that the PFM, the Philippines PFM committee, secretariat, and all the participants, they have been really in the driving seat of the entire assessments and the design of the PFM reform strategy. And without indeed the strong commitment from the government, nothing would ever be possible. So I thank Ascom Roy for being here, presenting the perspectives on how this worked out in the last 2 years, and for the continued support and strong engagement and ownership by the government of the Philippines. It has been a pleasure to really be part of this journey. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Great, thank you, Roy, and thank you, Maria. Before turning to Ruth, I want to remind everybody, please post your questions on the chat box. We will be posing them to panelists. Ruth, over to you, please.
Thank you, and good morning, afternoon, or evening to everyone joining us across the globe. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to share with you ADB's vision for advancing public financial management across Asia and the Pacific. Next slide, please. ADB is Asia's leading development bank. We have 69 member countries, 50 from Asia and the Pacific, and 19 non-regional members. We have 43 field offices, enabling us to work closely with our partners to tackle complex development challenges together. We are working towards a future in Asia and the Pacific that is not just prosperous, but also inclusive, resilient, and sustainable, meaning we aim for growth that benefits all communities and supports countries to withstand economic and environmental shocks. The ADB strategy puts people, the planet, and prosperity at the center. We use key indicators to guide our work. One important indicator focuses on improving public service and making sure public institutions are financially stable. This means strengthening how governance are managed and helping them build better financial management systems. Our vision is only possible by working together. By forming strong partnerships, we can drive real and lasting progress throughout Asia and the Pacific. Next slide. We deliver meaningful impact by integrating financial support with expert insights. We help shape strong policies and foster regional cooperation. By providing resources, sharing solutions that fit local needs, and building partnerships, we support lasting progress. We are proud to share that the ADB has joined the PEFA program alongside organizations such as the European Commission, IMF, the World Bank, and others. This partnership marks an exciting new chapter in the advancement of public financial management in the region. Next slide. Asia and the Pacific have faced immense challenges in recent years, including the COVID-19 pandemic and growing challenges posed by climate change. These issues have affected billions of people, slowed down economic growth, and widened inequalities. In 2025, ADB's total financial commitments reached $29.3 billion, which are helping the region grow and tackle development challenges. While meeting development needs requires substantial resources, every dollar counts and must be used efficiently. Next slide. ADB works across many sectors. In 2025, we committed $5 million specifically to public sector management, reflecting our strong focus on strengthening governance and building institutional capacity across the region. Strong governance, transparent processes, and resilient public institutions are important for lasting growth in Asia and the Pacific. Next slide, please. Asia is the world's fastest growing region, contributing to 60% of global economic growth. However, an estimated 3.2% of the population still live in extreme poverty. Recent assessments reveal challenges in public financial management among ADB developing member countries. Specifically, 52% of those who have completed a PEFA assessment struggle with essential PFM areas, including budget reliability, internal controls, and shifting to performance-based budgeting. Additionally, 42% of countries surveyed in the 2023 Open Budget Survey scored below the global average, with noticeable gaps in budget transparency and oversight mechanisms. These findings underscore the urgent need to strengthen PFM systems. Next slide. ADB will leverage its PEFA partnership to further increase efforts to help our clients prioritize PFM reforms to achieve better development outcomes. Our goal is to enhance PFM systems and institutional capacity across our developing member countries based on evidence-based reforms to help ensure that interventions are strategically targeted and aligned with international standards and best practices, ensuring that the PEFA diagnosis assessments effectively shape PFM reforms, guide initiatives, and inform policy dialogues. Our key 3 target outputs are global PFM tools. Through our expanded partnership in PEFA, we are committed to developing and delivering internationally recognized PFM tools, which will help countries to adopt best practices and address the emerging challenges in PFM. Regional PFM knowledge products and events. We are focused on providing targeted knowledge products, training, and peer lending events, which will also integrate climate and gender elements. And finally, country-level PFM improvements. We aim to support PFM assessments to help develop and carry out reform action plans and share lessons learned and best practices. In closing, by using diagnostic assessments, working with our global partners, and focusing on regional collaboration, we reaffirm our commitment to making public financial management reforms more effective, inclusive, and resilient. Together, we will help countries across Asia and the Pacific to deliver better public services, foster transparency, and achieve sustainable development growth. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. Before closing remarks, I want to go to some of the questions on the chat box. So I'm going to read them, and hopefully one of the panelists will pick up the question. The first question is, what PFM reforms are needed to ensure that public investments are climate resilient and aligned with national adaptation goals? And then we have another question. PEFA assessments often expose weaknesses that make Parliament and large spending line ministries uncomfortable. So how do we move from defensive reactions to genuine political ownership of PFM reform outside of the Ministry of Finance? And there is a question for Roy. How does Philippines government monitor PFM reforms, and what the good practices in bringing government officials and development partners together in this endeavor? And there's a question for our ADB colleagues. How does ADB see PEFA assessment reports fit into ADB Strategy 2030 for greater use of country PFM systems? And then there's a question for PEFA Secretariat. Why are there separate PEFA assessment reports for climate and gender? What are good practices emerging in dovetailing climate responsiveness and gender responsiveness into PFM systems? There is a question about how government PFM practices deal with unmeasurables like political economy and others to increase the impact of PEFA. I think we have a very good set of questions, so I want to start with Mona and Srini, and then go to Roy and Maria, and then Ruth. Please pick up any of these questions and please give your remarks.
Thank you. So there, maybe I can start with few thoughts and Mona can join. So first on this big question is, how do we get, say, for example, get parliaments and other agencies, not just the Ministry of Finance, but beyond the Ministry of Finance, comfortable about PFM reforms or excited and own about PFM reforms. So part of it, from the Secretariat perspective, we find that part of it is lack of understanding. Ministry of Finance knows it very well, but the broader ecosystem does not know how the whole PFM structure works. So what we are doing in the PFA Secretariat as part of the current phase of PFA program is developing customized, specialized tools for public accounts committees, for agencies outside the normal PFM, core PFM implementing agencies, for better understanding, simplified PFA assessment summaries, which they can quickly get messages and deliver upon. So that's one thing which is coming in the pipeline, which can contribute possibly a bit, but the bigger story is that it is everybody's job to make it happen. Quickly on the climate and agenda. So to me as a PFM practitioner, I do not think there should be a separate climate report or a separate gender report. PFM is important because it's good PFM. Climate PFM is important because it's good PFM. And there is one PFM. This all need to be integrated. But if we integrate everything at this point of time, what one finds is a lot of important aspects from gender and climate may not even fit into, and it become overwhelming. So right now, reports are presented a little separately, but there is always a mechanism eventually look to take each of these insights and see whether the budgets are climate and gender responsive. Unmeasurables. PIFA avoids the unmeasurable measurement because it wants to be an objective and evidence-based report. But at the same time, it's the measuring the unmeasurable. From a PIFA perspective, that can be actually measured in a PFM reform strategy. How strong the political economy is, how strong the coordination and human resources or technology are. So bringing that all together is the reform strategy process stage. And there are publications also on how to measure that. I'll stop there. And Mona?
Yes, thanks, Selena. I think you've answered all, but I think maybe about that public investment question, maybe I can take a shot at that. I mean, to make public investment climate resilient and aligned with national adaptation goals, governments might need to, for example, screen all projects for climate risks and require climate impact and vulnerability assessments before approval. They can also use climate criteria to choose which projects get funded, ensuring they support national adaptation plans. They can as well tag and track climate spending in the budget, so resources go to climate resilient priorities. They can buy climate resilient goods and services through procurement rules that favor resilient materials and standards. They can monitor and report climate related results so that they can know whether investments actually improve resilience, and support local governments with climate responsive funding and clear responsibilities, since adaptation is often local. Thank you.
Thank you. Roy and Maria, do you want to comment?
Yes, please. On the issue of how the Philippine government now is addressing the PFM, I mean, reform agenda, or how is it being managed? Actually, the PFM reform agenda is managed by a committee known as PFM Committee, composed of the Department of Budget and Management, the Commission on Audit, and the Department of Finance. So this committee managed and monitor the the activities on the Philippine reform agenda. In this midterm review of the Philippine PFM roadmap 2024 to 2028, the PFM committee will be issuing an updated roadmap scheduled to be released within this year, containing also the reform action plan that would be on the results of the PEFA assessments to be integrated in the original PFM reform roadmap that we submitted to the Office of the President. In effect, the results on this PEFA assessment will be an act of recalibration or updating of the roadmap to make it attainable, doable, and realistic to the actual situations or transactions that is going on in the Philippine government, in national government agencies, in local government units, and government corporations. So let me restate it that the PFM, or the PFM activities, is actually being managed and monitored and implemented eventually by our PFM stakeholders through this committee, PFM committee, composed of the DBM, COA, and Department of Finance. So we work as a collegial body moving forward with this PFM reform agenda. Thank you.
Maria?
Yes, perhaps I can take the question on how the PIFA assessments expose these weaknesses that sometimes make the Parliament and line ministries uncomfortable, and how there is a possibility of a way forward. It is a very important question, and of course this is relevant for any kind of change management. As Srini mentioned earlier, the PIFA measures what is measurable. However, there's always aspects that are often not measurable, like, for example, the political economy. And that is why it is important for the assessment and reform process to be very inclusive and goal-driven and highly transparent. The reform needs to emphasize that the PFM system is not being established, or it was not established just for its own sake. It is ultimately a tool of socioeconomic development, meaning that the school are built and hospitals are serving well, and the frontline services are delivered on time and in quality, and that the PFM system affects real people, the citizens. The ministries and the Parliament are the ultimate accountable to the public, and the transparency in the PIFA assessment results invokes this stewardship aspect of the role of the ministry and Parliament leaders, a normal mechanism for democratic process. So in this sense, the PIFA assessments improve democracies. As Comroy was mentioning, in the Philippines, we have the PFM committee, secretariat, where all the government oversight agencies work collaboratively. We are working with the government, all the development partners in the Philippines, monitoring the actions, the reforms. So it's a very inclusive process that we hope to continue also in the future, to embed these monitoring mechanisms. Also, as Srini pointed out, this is not just a diagnostic, an assessment that stops in time. It's supposed to be not only the PIFA assessment results itself being updated and reassessed every 3 to 5 years, but also the PFM reform actions, the key performance indicators to address the gaps, continuously be monitored and calibrated and adjusted to the needs of the citizens and of the country. Thank you. I don't think we have time to answer more questions, but thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Ruth, do you want to add anything?
Thank you. I just wanted to add about how ADB PIFA assessments fit in with the use of country systems. And I would say that it fits in perfectly. It's one of our fundamental FM goals to use country systems to develop partner collaboration and also to exercise our fiduciary oversight. Our mandate requires us to ensure that the loan proceeds have been used only for the purposes intended, with attention to economy and efficiency. And this is at the heart of the PEFA assessments. And so together, these really gel and dovetail as part of our mission, our mandate, and our passion for helping and making sure that development is more long-lasting and resilient. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Srini, there's one last question about the complementarity between PEFA and other tools, especially maps, on strengthening broader resource management systems. Do you want to say anything about that?
Thanks, Sardar. Very briefly, this is at the tool development stage. Normally, it is designed in a complementary way, and then particularly on maps, it's a deep dive. So structurally, PEFA is treated as the broader overall tool of the entire PFM system, and each of the deep dive tools, for example, maps for procurement, that for tax, or PMF for supreme audit institutions, they dwell in greater detail for specific reforms. And we occasionally study how these are working when different reports are there, and they are quite consistent and complementing each other. I'll post the link of a stock take report that we did some time back.
Great, thank you. Before turning to Aman, I want to thank the panelists and the participants. We had close to 100 participants, and they stayed till the last minute, and this has been a very successful webinar. With that, I'm going to turn to Aman to provide the closing remarks, and then we will be calling the day off. Aman, over to you, please.
Thank you so much, Sardar. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Warm greetings, literally and figuratively, from Manila. I know many of you are suffering through a very bad winter in certain parts of the world, but luckily here in Manila, we're having lovely weather. So we look forward to, if you would like to visit us, we would very much welcome you. So on behalf of the Asian Development Bank and our fellow PEFA partners, our sincere appreciation for your participation in today's first PEFA webinar of 2026. Your engagement and interest have made this event a very meaningful start to an important year of collaboration. The timing of ADB's formal entry to the PEFA partnership is significant. Recent events in some of our developing member countries reflect declining public trust in government institutions and concerns over how public funds, including development aid, are being managed. PFM systems are essential for fiscal discipline, transparency, and accountability. And if they are strong and reliable, they make public fund management effective, build public trust, and enable economic growth. Therefore, joining the PEFA program at this time makes more sense than ever and is fully aligned with ADB's strategic priorities and development indicators. Today's session has reinforced a crucial takeaway. The PEFA program is vital in promoting sound public financial management. At ADB, we have relied on PEFA diagnostics to shape ADB's interventions, whether through policy-based lending or investment projects. More recently, we have stepped up our role in active participation in PEFA assessments, as has been noted by Ruth and others. Building on this momentum, we are eager to move from being primarily a user of PEFA tools to becoming an active contributor to a country's PFM trajectory, its PFM journey, and to the broader knowledge base on PFM diagnostics. The effectiveness and reliability of a country's public financial management systems are crucial to ensuring ADB's support is used efficiently and effectively, and that borrowing governments remain transparent and accountable to their citizens. We are grateful to our PEFA partners for their very warm welcome at ADB into this collaborative and diverse community. We look forward to working with all partners to further strengthen public financial management practices. As we move forward, let us continue to build on our shared commitment to transparency, resilience, and inclusive development. Through collaboration, evidence-based reforms, and a collective pursuit of excellence, we can deliver lasting positive impact for the people and communities we serve. Thank you so much for participating today, and I look forward to future PEFA seminars during the year. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you all. Looking forward to seeing you in the next event. Thank you.